Hello, I'm Chris Kenworthy and welcome to Drums, Beats and Rhythms in Logic Pro 10. We're going to start by creating a drummer track. And if you've seen the course Learn Logic Pro 10 in 2 hours, you'll know your way around drummer. Even if you haven't, you can probably work out fairly quickly that it's easy to drag this puck around to make things more simple, more complex, louder, softer. It's easy to pick the instruments. Drummer's very intuitive, and you'll know that you can choose different session drummers over here to get different styles and use the presets. But if you've used drummer for a little while, you may begin to worry, am I going to sound like everybody else? Will somebody listen to my work and go, oh, that's a Logic Pro 10 drummer track? And that's what you really want to avoid. So drummer is just the tip of the iceberg. And in this course, we'll start with drummer, and we'll use it occasionally through the course, but we're going to go so much deeper into creating drums, beats, and rhythms. But the better you know drummer, and the more you can get out of it, the better your starting point. So we'll look at some tips and tricks for doing that now. I'll just close the editor window, and you'll notice that by default, 2 drummer regions are put in place. One has a little fill at the end, and then it's as though it goes into the main song. So you can just delete those, use the pencil tool and draw in whatever drummer regions you want. Another way of going about this is to put in arrangement markers. So if you see this little Hide Show Global Tracks button here, if you click that, and under arrangement, click plus, there you get an intro, which lasts 9 bars. I'm actually going to shorten that just for 4 bars. Now I'll click plus and we've got a verse, which again, I'm going to shorten how long the verse is. I'll click plus, we'll go straight to the chorus. Yes, that was a good guess. And click plus again. Now it's giving me another chorus, so I'll just click on the word chorus, change that to verse. And now we'll make this a short song. So instead of another chorus, we'll go to bridge, just a very short bridge. Click plus, one last chorus. And we'll end with an outro. With those in place, when I now create a new drummer track, we get a very different result. So I'll just delete this one, and I'll click drummer again and create. And when I close the editor window, you can see that we now have intro, verse, bridge, chorus, outro selected by drummer. And if you play through those, you can feel we have the feel of an intro, a verse, and when we get there, a chorus. Of course, this is never going to be your finished product, but if you already know your song and you know how long the bars are, this is a great way to get started. If you just want a really quick way to put some drums in place and start recording and then come back to work on your drums later, I can think of no faster way of doing it than this. I'll close that now though, and let's imagine we want to edit the drums themselves. Just expand our view over here. Just expand our view over here, and I'll close the inspector. And when you look at these drummer regions, you get a really good view of the sounds. So I'll just select this one. If I turn off the hi-hat and percussion, you can see this area gets very empty at the top. There's only a little bit of that in the fills. If I turn the percussion and hi-hat back on, you see those back in there. Equally, if we turn off the kick, I'll just have to get rid of the editor window, there's nothing at the bottom. So what this means is you can see the kicks and snares at the bottom and the hi-hats and percussion at the top. And this visual reference is really quite useful when working. I'm going to go back in, switch those kicks and snares back on. Now one way to increase complexity and interest is to select a region and start cutting it up. So let's look at this verse. I've selected my scissors tool here and I'm going to cut it at the 7 bar point and the 9 bar point, and you can see there automatically new fills have been put in. Let's just listen to that. New fill there and there, and they're different fills. That one's similar. So let's make them sound different. I'll go back to my pointer tool, double click this region, and for this verse I'll just turn the fills slider up, and that means as well as getting more fills, we get different fills. Then for this second region I'll maybe turn the fills down a little, and for the first one I'll turn them up. So now when we listen through to this one verse bar, we have a lot more complexity in there just by making 2 cuts and dragging the fills wheel. So when you want to increase complexity, you don't just drag the puck and drag up to complexity. You can do this chopping technique. And once you've chopped, you can also change what's going on in here. Let's do that with the chorus. And let's say we don't want it to be the same all the way through. If I don't want to use the scissor tool, I can just place the playhead and hit Command T, and that will chop it at those places. So we've got 3 sections of chorus now. I'm going to put the puck somewhere in the middle. And for the second one, I'm going to change from the cymbals to the toms. And I'm going to make it fairly loud and complex. Then for the final part of the chorus, I've gone back to the cymbals down here, but I'm going to go to variation 3, and I'm going to put that on loud and complex. So now we've taken that section and added a real richness to it. Of course, this isn't giving you the absolute control you're going to want eventually, which we will cover in the rest of the course, but it does give you enough control to shape the feel of a chorus or verse in this way. Something else I like to do is change the amount of push or pull during a verse, and it adds a really human feel. So let's split this about halfway through, and in the first one, I'll click on Details down here, and under Feel, I'm going to set that to Pull. And that just means it pulls the drum hits just ahead of the beat slightly. You hear it best when it's playing along with other instruments. And then in the second section, I'm going to change that to Push. And then when you change from one to the other, you just get this slightly human feel. And when that applies to a whole mix, it sounds really great. I like doing that sometimes in even smaller sections. You can break up into bars or even half a bar and change the amount of push or pull. The same is true with swing over here on the right. And swing is a setting you have to be very careful with because it really does change the feel of a piece. If we take this bar here and listen, there's some swing, which means it's swinging away from the beat, but not that much. If I turn that right up, that amount of swing can actually destroy the style of a performance, so you have to use this sparingly. Sometimes it adds a good jazzy swing feel to it, other times it can really push it too far. Again, I do like to split that, so if I split this bar into several sections, it's good to apply different amounts of swing, but small changes are the key to getting this right. Just close this, and I'm going to add a bass line. So I'm going to add a new track, software instrument. I'll choose the Liverpool bass. And in the Apple loops, I'm going to find Big Hair Bass 5 and just drag that in over here. And then British Invasion Bass 16 was quite good, so I'll drag that in afterwards. I'm actually going to move these up to the verse section just so we can hear them in place. And I'll loop that one out. Select these 2 areas, hit U to choose them and C to cycle them. Okay, you get the idea. I'll just click off Details, and under Kick and Snare, you'll know that we can select different numbers for different variations of kick and snare, but there's also a box here called Follow. If I check that, it now says Follow Major Attitude Bass. If you close that, that's the bass line we have selected here. So even though I have the Big Hair Bass and the British Invasion Bass, it means it's going to follow both of those. So our kick and snare are now linked to the bass line that we've put in there. And you can hear now that our drummer, it's as though our drummer is listening to that bass line and playing along to it. This is incredibly useful, and if you add another bass track or another music track of any kind, any software instrument, you can choose that as well. There's the drop down and you would be able to select from other tracks once they're in there. And this means that within 5 minutes of setting up something in Logic Pro, you can have a good bass track and a drummer that's following it, and it sounds pretty realistic. Very good starting point for creating a song. So what if I've been doing all this work and I want to change my drummer? Well, I can do that, but I might lose all the editing work I've done, all the changes to the fills and which instruments are selected and so on. So under this cogwheel here, make sure you check Keep Settings when changing drummers. Once that's selected, you can see now it's got a checkbox against it. I can go over here and let's say I'm going to choose Darcy, and all the edits that I put in before are going to remain. That's really useful if you decide you just want to change the feel of the drummer but want to keep the overall work you've done. So there you can see she's following the bass just as we set it up to do. You can keep the session drummer you've chosen but change their kit. So at the bottom you just click on the kit and in Drum Designer pick the one you want. I like hearing Darcy play the heavy kit. Big difference. One of the other great things is that if you open your library, you don't have to play the drummer performance through one of these traditional sounding drum kits. You can use a drum machine. So I'm going to select the Massive Beat drum machine, and now we'll listen to that. And you still have all the editability of drummer. So I could go in here and say, no, I actually want that to be simpler and softer, and the drummer algorithm changes. So you get the advantage of using a drum machine sound that you want and still having this flexibility of drummer's editor. If you're very happy with your drummer performance and you're sure you don't want to play with the controls anymore, you can just convert it to MIDI. One way to do that is to do it in the same lane. You just right click and convert to MIDI region. And there you go. Everything has become MIDI, and we can now double click that and edit it in the traditional way. We'll be looking at that editing later on in great detail. The beauty of this approach is that once you're absolutely sure that you've got everything you need from drummer, you can then use quantization and note shifting, which gives you a lot of creative outlet. So although drummer's great, it can just be used as a starting point, and that's what we'll be doing here.